I'm the Nevada Stray Cat, and I'm in Montello, Nevada. Montello is a town of about 50 people in the middle of nowhere, Nevada. So, why did I stop here? On Friday, the 4th of July, 2025, I was awakened about 20 to 9 by a noise like thunder. It was followed by the house shaking as if struck by something enormous. I later discovered that the sound was $30,000 worth of fireworks, purchased by the city of West Wendover for their holiday display, all conflagrating at once. The shockwave from that conflagration was what made the house shake. After surveying the house and determining that nothing was damaged, I decided that if I was going to be awake, I might as well be productive. So I got on the Ryker and headed out. I got on Interstate 80 westbound from Nevada exit 407 and took the freeway to Nevada exit 398, which is labeled Pilot Peak. I stopped to check my battery and be sure the camera was running at the Nevada historical marker. Number 46 for Pilot Peak, if you're keeping track, and then got back on the road. I know I swore even, that I was never taking the Ryker off pavement again, last week when I got stuck in the sand. But I'd been over this road in a car with my dad, and knew that the Ryker could handle it. It's hard-packed dirt for its entire length, and hard-packed dirt is honestly a better riding surface than some of the asphalt roads I've taken in my life. In the 1840s, there were two books which primarily guided pioneers headed for Oregon and California, from what was then the United States and which today we call back east. The first of those books was the Report of the Exploring Expedition to the Rocky Mountains in the year 1842 and to Oregon and North California in the years 1843 to 44, by Army officer and explorer John C. Fremont, about whom I have spoken before. Fremont was exquisitely qualified to write the book, being an engineer, surveyor, and explorer who had taken his expeditions all through the region. Unfortunately, the more popular book was The Immigrant's Guide to Oregon and California by Lansford Hastings. Hastings was not an explorer, nor a surveyor, nor an engineer. He was a land speculator. Worse, at the time the book was published, he had never traveled the route he recommended to immigrants. He promised the route would shave hundreds of miles off the trip to California, and he wasn't wrong about that. The modern route of Interstate 80 roughly follows his proposed route. Because he'd never made the trip, What he didn't know, and what killed dozens, if not hundreds of people trying to follow his route, was that the conditions of the trail were much, much worse than the established route. To understand the issue, you have to remember the different scale of times. I'm riding a 2023 Can-Am Ryker 900 ACE, and, quick digression, I have since learned that Can-Am customer service was mistaken about what ACE stands for. It's actually Advanced Combustion Efficiency, and applies to the Rotax engine which powers the Ryker. On this day in 2025, I was making about 30 miles per hour on this hard-packed dirt road up Pilot Valley, which lies between the Pilot Range to the east and the Toano Range to the west. In 1846, when the Donner Party came through here, there were no homesteads, no hard-packed dirt road, and they made between 8 and 20 miles per day in ox-drawn wagons. Another digression about engines. Many modern people don't know what an ox is. Oxen are cattle, like the cows you may spot from the road. They're usually large, most often steers, and specifically trained to pull loads. Pioneers generally preferred them over mules because oxen can survive on local forage, where mules generally can't. Or at least that's my understanding. I can change my own oil on an internal combustion engine, but I've only a nodding familiarity with equines and cattle. Oh, and yes, it rained, or at least sprinkled on me a little bit. Getting back to the topic at hand, however, where this road up the valley took me about an hour to travel, it may have taken the Donners half a week or longer. When they came around the south end of the Pilot Range in early September, not yet even to the fall equinox, they ran into a snowstorm. The ranches out here date to 2 generations later than the Donner Party, to the 1880s. The ghost town of Oasis, Nevada, which I mentioned in my episode about the ride to Wells, was named for such a ranch. When my dad brought the family to the area in the 1980s for his job as plant manager at the Pilot Peak mine, he purchased 5 acres of land out here, somewhere, with the thought that he'd build a home on it at some point. It hasn't happened, but I can't do much finger-pointing as I have 40 acres in northern Arizona my late wife and I hope to build on, which is still unimproved. And who knows, it may yet happen that my nephew Aiden builds out here someday, or my niece Rosa uses that land in Arizona. The desert is a living ecosystem. It is not dead. From time to time, I see deer on the greens at the golf course in Wendover, and today, this magnificent fellow raced across the road in front of me, then turned and ran with me for a couple of 100 yards before stopping to watch me go onward. Only a few miles later I encountered this superb beauty standing in the road. Unfortunately, the camera I use is an action camera, focused on what happens close to it. This is the best it could do at capturing what I saw that day. At the north end of Pilot Valley Road, I join up with Nevada Route 233, which I take north across the Union Pacific Railroad tracks and into Montello. The first permanent settlement here was established in 1869, but it didn't really start to grow until 1904, when the Southern Pacific Railroad established a servicing depot for trains here, what they called a division point. One of the residents I spoke with said that, at its height, the town was home to about 4,000 people, but neither the level of construction nor the U.S. Census records seemed to bear that out. Officially, the village peaked at a population of around 800, though the person I discussed it with may have been counting the people living on ranches in the area as well as those living in town. Either way, when the railroad switched from steam to diesel in the late 1940s and early 1950s, the need for the servicing depot evaporated, and so did much of the town. Today, the U.S. Census-designated place, which includes the surrounding area, not just the village, has about 60 people living in it. They have a 2-room elementary school, complete with 2 teachers employed by the Elko County School District. But for middle and high schools, students have to go to Wendover or Wells, or use satellite internet to support homeschooling. There is no bus, by the by. Parents who elect to send their children either to Wendover or to Wells have to arrange transportation themselves. I stopped at the one fuel station in town and had a conversation with some nice but very lost tourists. They'd rented a car in Salt Lake, intending to visit the Grand Tetons National Park, and taken a wrong turn. And then again, coming out of the gas station. I got them turned around before they went very far, and I hope they made it to Wyoming.
If you go this way, it takes you back to I-80. You want to go that way on up to Montana.
Which is a good time to mention that, if you continue following Nevada Route 233 north, it changes to Utah Route 30 at the state line, and then continues to Snowville and Interstate 84 up near the Idaho border. But that's a story for another day. In the meantime, we're going south. Remember when I said that Oasis was the turnoff for Montello during my ride to Wells? It is, north up Route 233, and we're riding that route the other way. When the first American pioneers pushed through this area in the 1840s, it was already inhabited, and had been for thousands of years. The Shoshone and Ute people lived here as nomadic hunter-gatherers, and because there are always people who will see different as lesser, the American settlers regarded them as savages with no claim to the land or its contents. Initially, contact between pioneer parties headed for California and indigenous peoples was friendly. The locals were happy to show travelers where to find water and what the best routes to pass through were. Over time, however, the indigenous people began to notice that the cattle the travelers brought with them were consuming forage, meaning there was less for the wildlife the locals depended upon, meaning there was less wildlife. A process exacerbated by the travelers' habit of hunting the wildlife for their own meals. As the travelers considered the forage and the wildlife freely given by God, they saw no need to compensate the locals for their use, and friction began to develop. By the time the Donner Party came through here in 1846, the locals were raiding livestock from passing caravans, and at least one person on each side was killed in the raids on the Donners. Eventually, of course, the U.S. Army came through and conquered the area, forcing the locals into treaties that mostly ended up being broken within a few years. But that eventuality didn't help the Donner Party any at all. Nevada Route 233 parallels the old Transcontinental Railroad's route, and you can still see the modern tracks, now owned by the Union Pacific Railroad, modern successor to the Southern Pacific Company, off to the west of the road in many places. Today, that route joins Oakland, California with Chicago, Illinois, and while Amtrak has a route labeled Overland Route, I believe it actually uses different rails, making this a freight-only road. And that brings us back to Oasis, Nevada. As of the 2020 census, there were still 4 people living out here, but I haven't ever seen any sign of them, so I can't speak from personal experience. I got back on Interstate 80, eastbound, and headed home to Wendover. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed the ride, please do all the usual YouTube things. Like, comment, subscribe, and share with others you think might enjoy the trip. I'm the Nevada Stray Cat, and I'll see you around.